Well, here is my debris shelter that blew down last night with me sleeping inside it. So there's our last night's debris shelter leaning against today's debris shelter and making it more stealthy. It is so beautiful this morning after the blustery windiness of last night. Well, I must say I quite like the idea of being able to cook from my bed. We've got some chicken in oil, and I'm going to add these potatoes. Now, my shelter that I built on the roof last night, the wind changed direction, causing it to collapse. Was it a failure? No. It was just part of practice. Just part of life, you know. You got to practice stealth camping to get it right. Now, next time I know that when I camp on a roof, you've got to tie your 3 main sticks, especially my ridgepole, to a rock, because there's nothing else to anchor it to the ground or anything. There's no ground on the roof. So you have to tie it to some brick or to something, catch it. So was it a failure? No, it was a learning experience. And isn't that what training for any sport or dancing or shooting hoops, kicking goals, isn't everything just a matter of, you practice is failing. If you were perfect at it, you'd never have to practice. If you were going to ask a girl out on a date, if you never ask her out on a date, how are you ever going to go out on a date? You're going to have to ask and fail a few times, maybe go on a few dates that fail, to find out what you really want in a date. So failure is an option. Failure is practice. Practice is failure. You're expecting when you learn to dance or play an instrument or do anything, you're not going to be perfect at it the first time round. You're not even going to be, if you're learning to play a musical instrument, going to be perfect with it perhaps ever. You're going to always be improving. And the only way to improve is to practice, and to practice means to fail. So I'm sure I said I would learn something from stealth camping, and I did. I did learn from setting up a stealth camp on the roof that one has to anchor the poles onto something. I've had some other stealth camps in the rain which I ended up getting wet. I still enjoyed them. I'm sure when you practice dancing, you saw and you can't get the move right. But there's a sense of satisfaction that you feel that you're a little bit closer to perfection through practicing. For example, I can imagine an ice skater, how many times do they have to fall? How many times does a baby have to fall when it learns to walk? Through practice. You could call it a fail. You could also call it a success. The only thing that is a fail is not trying, because imagine a baby never tries to learn to walk. I mean, can you imagine how bad that would be? That, so that you never learn to succeed. And I'm sure there's so many people who are scared to try something. I don't want this fire getting out of hand here. Scared of trying something for fear of, failure. But if you just regard it as practice, if you might not want to, you might not feel like going to practice, but you always feel better when you come back from whatever it was that you were practicing. So our chicken's cooking nicely there in the oil. I'm sure all the best cooks got that way through a lot of trial and error. Imagine how many times you've got to get a recipe wrong before you get it right. This is actually a bit of a trial too. I haven't cooked chicken and potatoes in this particular wok before. So I'll be interested to see how it turns out. The only thing you have to be very careful to remember with this thing is not to touch the metal, because it gets so hot. So one has to have a piece of cloth if you want to move. If you want to move this wok around, And now we just leave that to cook. I think, especially with young people, say you go on social media, you mess up, you may never want to go on it again. Or you try some sport, you get embarrassed, someone laughs at you, your peers laugh at you. You decide you never want to try that again because you're too afraid. I think that's so, it must be so devastating to youngsters of today to have all that peer pressure. I mean, we used to have peer pressure, but at least when you went home, that peer pressure was no longer there. How do you like my bed? So I've got cooking in my shelter. Got my bed here. How lovely. Smoke's mostly away. Yeah, I would say that for youngsters of today, not being able, even at home, to get away from the peer pressure, I think that must be a bit of a pressure in itself. That must be quite hard on them. And if you mess up, there's so many people who can laugh at you, etc. And as I say, if we messed up, we left school, there was nobody to harass us once we went home. But now people can do it through WhatsApp and Twitter and whatever. They can all yak about you. So I would say that you've got to build a bit of robustness. Like when my shelter blew down last night, blew down on top of me, so what? I'd already slept a few hours. I just came and moved to here. Came and slept here for the night. And I slept very well. The plastic on the shelter was rustling and making this noise all night. That's the sort of noise that it made in the wind, but I think I've solved that problem largely now. And my messing up last night was mostly, I would say, the weather report being wrong. They said there'd be no wind and that today would be windy, and yet today there's virtually no wind. And last night when I went to sleep there was no wind, and then it suddenly howled from the opposite direction, and that caused my debris shelter to blow over. But so what? It was still a wonderful night and a wonderful experience. So yeah, I'm not complaining at all. So this is trying something slightly different, cooking potatoes and chicken in this particular wok. Well, I'm sure it will all work out fine. We'll show you at the end how well it works out. We're going to add some herbs and spices to it when it's cooked a little bit longer. So this is like a wok, and this is from the lid from a microwave, and it seems to work quite well. Well, here is our lovely finished meal. These are the off scrapings from the pan. They are some of the tastiest bits, mixed with rosemary. Those potatoes are done to perfection. To perfection. Talking about perfection, I'm not a perfectionist. You might have noticed. And I think perfectionism is opposed to trying something, trying and failing. I think perfectionists can be hard on themselves, can try something, see that they suck at it, and just give it up. Which I say is a pity, because I say you've got to try something, you've got to try, you've got to fail. Perfectionism can come later, but if perfectionism puts you off trying something just because you do it so badly at first, then I think it's going to be a bad thing in your life. Now, I mean, the world needs some perfectionists, but it's amazing how far you can get without perfectionism. I mean, how many things have to be actually perfect? That chicken is tasty and succulent. You can see it's done perfectly. And the skin especially is the tasty part, where all the herbs manage to cling to. So, in the spirit of being prepared to fail, be prepared not to be perfect at first. Give yourself time and leeway to fail. And I'm sure my first debris shelter was a lot worse than my later ones. I began to discover after a while that I really do like these triangular type of debris shelters. They're just so stable. That slight rosemary taste and the salt with and the few herbs with the potato is also lovely. So, I mean, I generally just throw together my debris shelters. I'd rather do them quickly and do them than not do it at all. So sometimes just being prepared to throw together and know that if I throw an hour at the shelter, it'll be done. Whereas if I was a perfectionist, I might say, gee, I've got to throw 4 hours at this thing. And then it's still not going to be perfect. And then have I got 4 hours? Do I want to waste 4 hours? I can see how that striving for perfectionism may put you off just starting. So the important thing is to start something. Try it. Now this is the first time that I've cooked in that wok, chicken and roast potato, and I definitely like it. I didn't use too much oil. I used hardly any firewood. Could have failed. Chicken succulent. The potatoes are cooked right through, delicious. Didn't take me long. So, don't be a perfectionist. Try and fail even. Doesn't matter. I think perfectionists are perfectionists for themselves. I don't think they I'm not a perfectionist. It's very hard for me to speak as a perfectionist. I'm a quick slap it together kind of person. It really works for me. It's always worked for me. I don't mind. I start out very enthusiastically with things, but I rapidly lose enthusiasm. That may be why I'm not a perfectionist, because I know if I take too long on something, I may run out of steam and not complete it. So I think as Socrates says, know yourself. Know what works for you. Well, that was absolutely delicious. Here are 2 other plates which we managed to get from our roast chicken and potato fry. Well, I'm about to go to bed in my lovely day 2 stealth shelter. Let's climb into bed and show you what the view looks like looking out. So there is above us. There is the outside. Here is my sleeping bag. Hardly a breath of wind. Well, we'll say goodnight then.